our channel. Today's video, we haven't actually done one of these in a little while.
I don't even remember the last sit-down video we've done.
No, I can't remember either. So this is going to be all about how to survive van life in New Zealand in winter. So this was something that we did recently. We did a van life trip to New Zealand. It was about 2 months, just under 2 months of living in a van. It was exciting, it was crazy, it was frustrating, and it was just lots of different things rolled into one. So we really want to go through a few tips that we would have for anyone that's wanting to do a van trip through New Zealand, and let you guys know that sometimes I think it gets pretty glamorized, van life, a lot of the time, and you just definitely have this Instagram worthy idea in your head of what it's going to be. How did you feel about our van life trip overall?
There were times where I just wanted to have a hot shower. I wanted to be at home where I could sit on the lounge and be comfortable and not be cold. I wanted to be able to cook certain foods that we couldn't cook on a one stove setup, and just little things like that. You don't really appreciate the little things until you don't have them. So
yes, yeah. There's lots of things about van life that we really enjoyed and we love, and it's probably going to be the deciding factor, hopefully one day, whether we get our own van to travel around in, and now we know what it's like to have a trip like that. I feel like these tips are actually quite helpful. If you ever want to do a van life trip to New Zealand, especially in winter, there's a few really important things that you guys might not know. We really felt like this would be a good video to make today, and we hope you guys learn some new information from it.
Tip number 1. Stay as organized and as tidy as possible. Probably sounds easier than it actually is. However, because you're in such a small space, things have to have a certain place, otherwise you will become very untidy and things will get lost. Then you have to basically pull everything out of the car to find the one thing that you are looking for.
I would say that we're pretty tidy people overall. The place that's usually not our tidiest is our bedroom. And I don't know, it's just that place that tends to get left to last in terms of cleaning, and I feel like no one ever sort of goes in there apart from us, so it's like that one area that we don't always take care of the best. And for our whole 2 months, this van was like our bedroom. We both struggled with that at times, but we did find that the more organized you were, the better time you were going to have.
There were times where we would lose something as simple as a sock or like a phone charger. These things are the things that we needed at that specific time, and we'd have to stop, take out everything, put it onto the ground outside, lift up all the seats until we found it.
Also, this video is geared more towards van life in winter, and we did find that with winter clothing you do have a lot more of it, so it's really important to stay as tidy as you can and as organized as you can. And once you've got scarves and beanies and socks and coats, that stuff takes up so much room, and if it doesn't have a place, there's stuff everywhere. And as you'll see from the clips as well from our van, we actually had to lift up the seat in the back of the van to get to our luggage. And if everything wasn't in its place, it was just a nightmare trying to get out anything for the day. So definitely our number 1 tip is to stay organized. So our second tip is to opt for extra comforts if you can. These would really vary in terms of what we're talking about when we're talking about especially in winter. There's a lot of extra comforts that you can opt for, which you don't always think about, and sometimes you don't want to do it because it's going to add on to the extra price tag at the end of it all. But honestly, I think there was just some things that we didn't do that we definitely recommend other people to do.
Some of the extras that we are talking about include winter packs. So a lot of van companies will offer a winter pack, so you can get things like heaters and extra blankets and those sorts of things. We would highly recommend you do take those. We didn't take those sorts of things, and we had to go and buy a couple of things from the warehouse, which is a department store kind of thing in New Zealand. We'd also recommend staying in some paid campsites every now and then to have those luxuries like a shower. Even if it's a 4-minute shower that costs $1 coin, we would highly recommend doing those sorts of things, because as good as it is to stay in free campsites to keep your costs down, sometimes you just need that luxury of a hot shower and somewhere where you can get a little bit of power, or to cook some food in an oven, or to use the Wi-Fi. We recommend you treating yourself every now and then to do those sorts of things.
We left it a bit late when we got the things that we needed from the warehouse, so we kind of wish we'd done that at the beginning of the trip, because when we were really cold at night, for example, we would usually turn the car on and leave the air conditioning or the heating running in the car, and that was using our petrol essentially, and spending money in other ways that weren't necessarily very efficient. It wasn't very efficient at heating the car overall, and I really wish that we had have taken like a heater pack or something similar earlier on. Also, when we were cooking, at night sometimes, when you have those cold winds coming through, it is impossible to get that flame. Boiling pasta or boiling rice or whatever you need to do, it was impossible, and it was very frustrating at times. When Dean was talking about paying that little bit more for campsites, definitely something that I would recommend, because it's just every now and then. We were staying in a lot of free sites, and then I got sick, and it was so cold and so it was quite miserable at times.
It just brings your mood down when you get sick and it's very cold. The last thing you want to do is be out in the elements, cooking dinner, or being in a car where you're actually getting colder. So those little things really did kind of add up towards the end of our trip.
I think one of the best things I ever did when I was sick was actually we paid a little bit extra to stay at it was maybe a $30 or $40 campsite one night, and I got a hot shower, and it was the best thing ever. It was so good. So it's just like little things like that about taking care of yourself throughout winter that's a little bit different to summer.
Our third tip is to download as many apps as you can that are relevant to your trip before you get there. Campermate and Rankers and weather apps as well, but Campermate and Rankers are great for finding campsites. So this will come in handy when you want to kind of book your stay, or you can see where you're headed. So if you're headed to a new town that day, you're not driving around till 9 p.m. trying to find a campsite. You can see where all the campsites are and the address and how much they cost, all there in the Rankers or Campermate app. So we use these pretty much daily to find our campsites, whether they were paid or free.
Planning ahead in winter is actually such a good thing to do, I think, in this situation, because there were a lot of times where we'd get quite anxious towards the end of the day if it was starting to get dark and we didn't have anywhere planned to stay. And I think in winter as well, where a lot of places do close that little bit earlier too. So in summer they might be open till, some of them might be open till 9 p.m, 10 p.m. And sometimes in winter they'll only be open till 5 or 6 p.m. So you do have to get in a little bit earlier with some of the campsites sometimes, and it is a bit of a worry if you don't sort of plan ahead in that sense. So we did find that downloading these apps, particularly in winter, do come in handy, and planning ahead really makes all the difference.
Our fourth tip is to regularly check and monitor road conditions. Being winter, it can snow in many parts of New Zealand. Many roads, like for example if you're going to Milford Sound, they can actually close those roads, or you might need to get chains for your wheels. It is illegal to drive on many roads. Even if there isn't any snow, it is illegal to drive on these roads without chains in your car, just in case. So you have to keep an eye on those sorts of things as well.
Make sure you're planning ahead once again and looking at those weather forecast conditions. It definitely saved our butt a couple of times, I think, throughout our trip. Tip number 5 is going to be all about bugs. And bugs in New Zealand are quite commonplace, like they are in Australia. However, there were a certain amount of times that we found it got to the point where it was very difficult to cook our food, or it was very difficult even wearing clothing that wasn't completely covering our skin. We would be getting bitten a lot. This is usually sandflies that are the culprit, or even mayflies, which were our first experience with bugs in New Zealand on a large scale. First night actually in the van, it was a very difficult night, and we did not cook dinner because there were so many mayflies hanging around the car and getting in the car. So one thing I would definitely recommend, even though it's winter, I mean obviously this tip is probably shared amongst summer trips pretty often. It's pretty standard, I think, to buy bug spray or Aerogard or anything like that, but I think it's definitely needed in winter also. It's just a van life thing in general. Even in winter there were instances where the bugs were getting a little bit too much.
To add to that, I would also recommend getting things like air fresheners. If you have your dirty laundry, if you haven't been staying in paid campsites, showering for a few days like we did, we often stayed couple of days, 3 or 4 days in free campsites without showers. The BO and the smells build up over a period of time. Dirty socks, dirty clothes, things like that. Air freshener, and we also had like a linen spray that we could spray onto our clothes just to make them smell a little bit better.
Van life is a very smelly situation, and I highly recommend those things also. It's just so difficult when you're living in such a small space with one another for such a long time. And like Dan was saying, there were times where we were staying in a lot of free campsites. You don't always have the option for a shower at those free campsites. Sometimes in summer, there is a lot of options for outdoor showering. In winter, you don't really want to use the outdoor showers. It's far too cold.
Way too cold.
I second everything that he's just said there. I think air freshener, linen spray is really nice and fresh for the car. I don't really like using a lot of aerosols and that sort of thing, but it definitely helped. For the time we were in New Zealand in the van, it definitely helped overall.
So those are our 5 tips for surviving van life in New Zealand in winter. We hope you enjoyed those tips. We hope that you take them on board when you do go to New Zealand in winter. Make sure you subscribe, click the notification bell, and follow us on Instagram and Pinterest. They are our 2 favorite social media sites at the moment.
We hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next video.